Welcome to Ticker Take Talk. To our listeners all across the USA, I want you to imagine a tiny ocean bottleneck that controls roughly 20% of the world's oil.
Which is a massive amount of the global supply, by the way.
Right, exactly. Now imagine the gatekeepers of that bottleneck suddenly just refuse to accept US dollars for passage, and they demand physical gold instead. We are looking at a deep dive today that dissects a hidden fundamental shift in the global financial system. I mean, it's basically the slow motion fracturing of the petrodollar.
Yeah, and before we really dig into the mechanics of that, let's establish a clear baseline. Because the sources we're unpacking today, they touch on some highly charged geopolitical maneuvers, involving the US, China, Russia, Iran.
For sure, and we should be clear about our stance on that.
Exactly. We are not here to take sides or endorse any foreign policies or judge the political landscape at all. Our entire focus is strictly on unpacking the economic mechanics and the market signals detailed in the source material. We are looking exclusively at the math and the money flows.
Yeah, that distinction really matters because what we are analyzing today, it affects you directly. I mean, the very system that has quietly kept your grocery bills in check and funded your retirement for the last 50 years is, it's currently facing its biggest stress test yet.
It really is. And, you can't understand the vulnerability of the house until you understand the foundation. We have to rewind to the early 1970s for a second.
Right, because to understand 2026, we need to know what happened back then.
Exactly. So in 1971, Nixon officially takes the U.S. off the gold standard. He basically announces to the world that dollars could no longer be exchanged for physical gold.
Which was a huge shock to the system.
Huge. Suddenly, the dollar was backed entirely by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government rather than, a hard asset.
Which kind of begs the question, right? If the currency isn't backed by gold anymore, why would any foreign country hold billions of dollars in their central bank reserves?
Right. The global financial system desperately needed a new anchor.
And as the source details, that anchor became crude oil. So in 1974, Henry Kissinger brokers this landmark secret deal with Saudi Arabia.
The birth of the petrodollar.
Exactly. The U.S. provides military protection, and in exchange, Saudi Arabia agrees to price all of its oil exports exclusively in U.S. dollars. And on top of that, they invest their surplus oil revenues right back into U.S. Treasury bonds.
It's just the sheer mechanical brilliance of that financial construct is wild. Because within a few years, the rest of OPEC followed Saudi Arabia's lead.
Right, the whole cartel.
Yeah. Functionally, this meant that every single barrel of oil sold anywhere on the planet had to be paid for in U.S. dollars. If Japan wanted to buy oil from Nigeria, Japan first had to acquire U.S. dollars to do it.
So it created this permanent structural demand for the American currency globally.
Exactly. A demand loop completely independent of anything the U.S. actually produced or exported. It essentially gave the U.S. the superpower of, exporting its inflation to the rest of the world.
Okay, let's unpack this. It functions like the invisible operating system of a smartphone. You never think about it, you never actually see the code, but it runs every single app in the background, and you only notice the operating system when your apps suddenly start crashing.
That is a great way to put it.
And we are now in 2026, and the apps are crashing. The Strait of Hormuz handles up to 21 million barrels of oil every single day. And Iran is currently disrupting that choke point.
But the source points out they aren't just blocking it entirely, right?
Right. They are utilizing asymmetric warfare and charging a toll to let tankers through. But here is the kicker. They are demanding that toll be paid in Chinese yuan.
Which is such a surgical strike against the architecture we just talked about.
Yeah.
Unlike the dollar, the Chinese yuan is not freely convertible on the open global market.
Meaning you can't just easily trade for it wherever you want.
Exactly. To get Chinese yuan reliably, you generally have to sell China something it wants. And historically, the one asset China has always been willing to accept in exchange for yuan is physical gold. Yeah, so by demanding yuan, Iran has effectively created a scenario where global energy passage is suddenly tied directly to gold, completely bypassing the dollar settlement system.
But wait, is Iran really some macroeconomic mastermind in the scenario, or are they just a regional disruptor throwing sand in the gears of global trade?
Well, the source material characterizes Iran's strategy as strictly asymmetric. I mean, they're spending a tiny fraction of what the U.S. spends on force projection.
Right, they don't have to match U.S. military spending.
Exactly. They do not need to definitively win a conventional war. They just need to impose severe economic pain on the global supply chain for long enough. Their ultimate objective here is to institutionalize sovereign control over the Strait.
So if they get that formal recognition, they can just charge tolls indefinitely.
Yes. They gain the permanent architectural ability to tax 20% of global energy flows.
Okay, so Iran might be the immediate catalyst here, but they couldn't demand yuan if the infrastructure for it didn't already exist.
That is the crucial part.
Right. They are leveraging an alternative system that other global superpowers have been methodically building. China has been quietly setting the stage to dethrone the dollar without firing a single shot.
Yeah, back in 2018, they launched the Petrodollar contract, which explicitly allowed oil to be priced and traded in yuan.
And then by 2025, their payment system, the CIPS system, was processing over 220 trillion yuan.
Right, CIPS is basically their in-house alternative to the Western SWIFT network. It gives them the plumbing to clear massive transactions entirely outside the purview of Western banks.
Which is a huge structural shift, and China's long-term play here is to become the price setter for global commodities, right? They need cheap energy for their manufacturing base.
Exactly. But they aren't acting alone. You have to look at Russia's pivot, too. In 2022, the U.S. and its allies froze roughly $300 billion of Russia's foreign exchange reserves.
Which basically meant the ledger entries Russia thought they owned were just wiped out or denied.
Right. And after that, Russia pivoted hard. They rapidly became the primary alternative energy supplier for major Asian economies, and they are doing all that massive trade exclusively in rubles and yuan.
Let me ask you a provocative question here. If we look at the source data, was that 2022 decision by the U.S. to freeze Russia's reserves the ultimate own goal? Because immediately following that freeze, Saudi Arabia, the absolute linchpin of the original petrodollar deal, they started hoarding physical gold.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the source material heavily implies that causality. Watching the world's primary reserve currency be weaponized, it fundamentally altered the risk calculus for every nation holding U.S. treasuries.
I mean, if you're a Gulf nation, the swing vote here, you realize your paper assets can be frozen overnight.
Exactly. So starting in 2022, Saudi Arabia dramatically accelerated its gold purchases, largely using Swiss intermediaries.
Which obscures the volume and where it's going.
Right. They are actively building the financial infrastructure to operate outside the dollar system. They are hedging.
So the rest of the world is building a parallel system. Let's bring this back home to the U.S. A listener might ask, why doesn't the Fed just step in and use their normal tools to fix inflation and stabilize things?
Right, their traditional playbook.
Yeah, but the problem is they are staring down stagflation, rising inflation and a contracting economy at the same time. Back in 1980, Paul Volcker just hiked rates to 20%. It caused a brutal recession, but it crushed inflation.
But the underlying math in 2026 makes the Volcker option functionally impossible to execute today.
Because of the debt.
Exactly. In 1980, the national debt was roughly $900 billion, about 32% of GDP. Today, it sits at over $33 trillion.
That's a debt to GDP ratio, well over 120%.
Right. If the Fed raised rates to 20% today, the annual interest payment alone on that debt would approach $5 trillion.
Here's where it gets really interesting. $5 trillion is essentially the entire amount of tax revenue the federal government collects in a single year.
Yep, every single cent.
Every tax dollar would go strictly to paying interest. Zero funding for defense, Social Security, infrastructure. It's like trying to put out a house fire with a hose that's connected straight to a gas line.
That is a terrifying but accurate analogy.
Yeah.
Based on this trap, the source concludes the Fed really has no choice but to allow a slow bleed of elevated inflation.
Just quietly eroding the purchasing power of your currency to manage the debt burden.
Exactly. And that slow bleed is exactly what is triggering massive alarm bells in the bond market right now.
Oh, wait, aren't U.S. bonds supposed to be the absolute safest place to hide when global conflicts break out? Why would the adults in the room be dumping them?
Normally, yes. In 2008 or 2020, institutional investors instinctively flocked to treasuries. Demand skyrockets, yields go down. But right now, long-term treasury yields are rising.
Because there's massive selling pressure.
Right. The nations that historically bought our debt, Japan, China, Saudi Arabia, they're suddenly under immense financial pressure to pay for much more expensive oil imports.
Oh, so they need cash immediately?
Exactly. And when a sovereign nation needs vast amounts of cash rapidly, they sell off their most liquid assets first, which means liquidating U.S. treasuries.
Driving bond prices down and yields up.
Yes. And the source points to a very clear historical rhyme scheme here. From 1971 to 1980, we saw supply shocks cause inflation, leading to trapped central bank responses, paper asset crises, and finally a massive surge in the value of hard physical assets.
Which brings us to the silver disconnect. If traditional safe havens are flashing red, where is the smart money hiding? The data points straight to physical commodities, specifically silver.
Yeah, the disconnect there is staggering right now.
In early 2026, the paper price of silver plummeted from around $120 down to $65 in weeks. The media said the commodity run was over.
But the underlying mechanics tell an entirely different story. That violent crash wasn't a lack of real-world demand. It was a result of forced paper liquidation.
Because of the CME margin hikes, right?
Exactly. The CME group rapidly hiked the margin requirements on silver futures from 11% up to 15% and then to 18%.
So if you're trading on borrowed money, suddenly you need way more cash on hand.
Right. It triggers automatic margin calls for thousands of leveraged traders simultaneously. If they don't have the cash, the broker just mechanically liquidates their paper contracts.
They're forced to sell no matter what the actual physical metal is worth. So it's a manufactured crash in the paper market. It's essentially a high-stakes game of musical chairs where the venue sold 7 tickets for every 1 actual seat in the room.
That's exactly the ratio the source confirms. The paper-to-physical ratio on the COMEX is a staggering 7-to-1. 557 million paper ounces, claiming ownership of just 78 million actual physical ounces.
If even 15% demanded delivery, the exchange defaults. And we know it's scarce because lease rates for institutions to borrow physical silver spiked to between 6 and 8%.
When, historically, it sits at a tiny fraction of 1%. This raises an important question. Why is physical metal experiencing such extreme scarcity?
Structural demand. China is installing roughly 100 solar panels every single second.
Yeah, plus EVs, AI data centers, precision-guided missiles. We have consumed more silver than we mine for 6 consecutive years.
That's a hard deficit. So while retail is panicking over paper prices, what are the institutional giants doing? Warren Buffett is sitting on a record $370 billion in cash.
Right.
JP Morgan is accumulating up to 1 billion ounces of physical silver, projecting prices at $81. Jane Street poured $1.3 billion into the SLV ETF, a 500 times increase for them.
And Swiss banks rotated over $4 billion out of gold and directly into physical silver.
Wow.
Notice the contrast. Retail experiences forced selling from engineered volatility. Institutions are actively acquiring the physical assets structurally required to power the global economy for the next 50 years.
Buffett's cash isn't a bet on the dollar, it's optionality.
Exactly. Cash lets them be aggressive buyers when everyone else is forced to liquidate.
Okay, so let's bring this directly down to the listener's wallet. What's the actionable framework here? Tier 1 is passive investors, your standard 401k contributors. The mandate is do not panic sell, dollar cost average into the falling market.
Right. Keep contributing.
The source notes energy tracking funds like XLE or VDE are strong, but let me challenge this for a second. So what does this all mean for the average person? If the whole dollar system is collapsing, why on earth is the source telling passive investors to stay heavy in broad U.S. index funds?
I know it sounds counterintuitive when you're staring at a crisis, but you cannot argue with the math of market crashes. You simply cannot time the exit at the top and the re-entry at the bottom.
If you miss the bottom, you miss the bull run.
Exactly. It permanently destroys your wealth compounding. And more importantly, productive corporate assets retain intrinsic value. Companies that build software or AI infrastructure, they will just adjust their prices in whatever currency is being used.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, tech valuations act like a compressed spring during high-rate environments. When rates eventually fall, they recover sharply.
Moving to Tier 2. Active investors. Watch the money flows. International diversification is critical as the petrodollar transition unfolds. And watch that historic divergence in metals. Either physical drops to paper or paper shoots up to physical.
Right. And finally, Tier 3, wealth protection. Apply the institutional playbook. Build cash reserves for optionality.
Be the buyer when others are forced to sell.
Exactly. And if you buy physical precious metals, treat them as long-term insurance against currency debasement, not a quick trade. And crucially, hold them completely free of debt or leverage.
Because leverage guarantees a margin call will shake you out during engineered volatility. Okay, let's pull all these threads together. The invisible 1974 petrodollar architecture is actively fracturing. China and Russia are building alternative, physical-backed payment rails, catalyzed by Iran. The U.S. is trapped by $33 trillion in debt, so the Volcker playbook is dead. But the vital takeaway for you, the listener, is that market crashes do not destroy wealth.
Right, they simply transfer it.
Exactly. From the panicked to the prepared.
And as we watch this historic global wealth transfer unfold in real time, I really want to leave you with one final, broader implication to consider.
Let's hear it.
If the architecture of the global financial system is fundamentally rewiring itself to place a premium on physical, tangible commodities like oil, gold, and silver over paper promises and debt, what exactly happens to the perceived value of purely digital, non-resource-backed assets in the decade to come?
Wow, that is an incredibly heavy question to chew on as we watch this new infrastructure get built. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive on Ticker Tape Talk. We hope this breakdown gives you the clarity to look past the headlines and understand the actual mechanics driving the markets. Remember to stay curious, stay informed, and always remember that the best way to navigate hard times is to understand them better than anyone else in the room. Catch you next time.